Peter Drucker famously said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." So, what were the cultural cornerstones that have enabled the rise and the rise of the House of Tatas? Hello and welcome to Icons. I'm your host, Ramesh Damani. Tata's, the salt to software giant, is one of the few institutions of independent India that makes us all proud. The group was founded by the late Jamsetji Tata, father of Indian industry, the greatest philanthropist of the 19th century, and a one-man planning committee are just some of the monikers used to describe him. To discuss his life, legacy, I'm joined by the authors of the book, Jamsetji Tata, Powerful Learnings for Corporate Success. Please help me welcome two veterans of Bombay House, R Gopalkrishnan and Harish Bhat. Gentlemen, welcome to Icons.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So nice to have you. Stephen Covey, your author, so you've read his book. He talks about the 7 traits of highly effective people, or 7 habits of highly effective people. You've dissected the Tata Group into 10 Ps. How did that exercise start, Gopalji?
You know, Stephen Covey has given 7 ideas of effective people, which is at an individual level today. We were intrigued by the fact that Jamsetji Tata began his enterprises with a certain philosophy and has somehow kept that philosophy alive for 150 years.
Which is unparalleled in corporate world.
Unparalleled is probably the right word. I'm sure there must be the odd one, but I'm not aware of it. So people were slicing the cucumber, if I may take the metaphor, horizontally and getting slices. So how I created TCS, how I
created Tata Steel,
turned around Tata Steel and so on, Titan. But we wanted to cut it vertically. And that caused me to ask exactly the question that you have touched upon. What was this cultural pillars that come through in the vertical slice? And that's how we arrived at the 10 Ps, principles, perseverance, and so on and so on.
Let me pick on the first one. You talked about principles, Gopalji, and that has always been the cornerstone of any Tata enterprise. And it was principles that saved Tata Steel from bankruptcy 100 years ago. Tell me that story.
There's a story with regard to, say, Tata Steel, which appears in the book, which I'm going to ask my esteemed colleague Harish Bhat to narrate. But before I get to that, I just want to say, where does principles fit into this? You have to have a philosophy. And that Jamsetji Tata had this philosophy of community being center stage is fairly well known and doesn't require me to repeat it. But that's a niyat. That is your objective, strategic intent. But out of the niyat comes niti, conduct. And principles are related to niti. So I'm a very strong advocate of niyat, niti and niyam. And we should not get lost in the niyam, forgetting the niti and the niti, first item that came there is principles, which is what are the guiding principles that you're going to leave for successors to manage this enterprise. And the story of Tata Steel and how it came near to bankruptcy in the 1920s is narrated in the book as an example of that. And I would request Harish Bhat to...
Yeah, Harish, please step in and explain to me, how did Tata save Tata Steel from bankruptcy?
Yeah, so Ramesh, it's a fascinating story. You know, Tata Steel began production of steel in the 1910s, 1911 or 1912 is when it started production.
Which was audacious anyway to begin with.
Which was audacious anyway. The British were scoffing of Jamsetji Tata's idea, but Tata Steel became a reality because of Jamsetji Tata's vision and his son Dorabji Tata, who then became the second chairman of the Tata Group after Jamsetji passed away in 1904. He made sure that Tata Steel came to fruition eventually. Sometime by 1914, 1915, World War I had started. Tata Steel had also undertaken some expansion work towards the end of the 1910s. But because of the aftermath of World War I, the demand for steel collapsed. And it collapsed in places like Japan, which were a primary customer for Tata Steel.
Right.
And as a result, By the time you got into 1922, 1923, 1924, Tata Steel was facing very tough times, and Dorabji Tata was the then chairman of the Tata Group. Now, in the meanwhile, Dorabji Tata, many years ago, had also got married to a lady called Meherbai Tata.
Correct.
And he was deeply in love with her. So he had gifted her what was at that time the largest diamond in the world. It continues to be the 6th largest diamond in the world.
Bigger than the Kohinoor, if I'm
yes,
not
the
mistaken.
Jubilee diamond, and it was 254 carats in size. It was so expensive that I am told whenever they took it out of the locker, they had to pay a premium to the insurance agency. Now, I'll tell you why this story gets interesting as we go along.
Sure.
So one day in 1924, Dorabji Tata, seated in the headquarters of the Tata Group in Mumbai, receives a telegram from Jamshedpur, from Tata Steel.
All is
saying
lost.
that we have no money to pay our workers their next tranche of wages. Now, what does Dorabji Tata do? It was a very perilous state that Tata Steel found itself in. What he does, without blinking an eyelid, Lady Meherbai Tata and he commit their entire personal wealth to save the company. His entire personal wealth at that time was about 1 crore of rupees, which would be, I'm sure, many hundreds of crores today, but about 1 crore of rupees. That included this Jubilee diamond, the largest diamond in the world.
Salaries had to be paid irrespective.
Yes.
No one had to be laid off.
So he went to the Imperial Bank of India, which is the current State Bank of India, and he pledged his entire wealth, including the Jubilee diamond, and raised a loan of 1 crore of rupees. And that was used to pay the workers of Tata Steel. Not a single worker was retrenched. The company continued production. And as you went into the 1930s, Tata Steel once again became a very prosperous enterprise. And of course, the pledge was redeemed that Dorabji Tata had made. But what amazes me, Ramesh, is that here is a man whose principles told him that he had to stand by the company that the Tata Group had promoted. Even though the Tata Group was not the only shareholder of Tata Steel had an IPO by 1906, 1907.
It was actually the first listed company in India.
Yeah. And today, if you go to Jamshedpur and if you visit the Dorabji Tata Park, what Tata Steel have done is that they've erected a large replica of the Jubilee diamond made in steel to pay tribute to this courageous decision of Dorabji Tata.
Always remind them. But let me take you into this century, from 19th century to the 20th century, not the 21st or 20th. Those same principles came at a crossroad with a company called Tata Finance, which was a dark chapter in the history of the Tatas, but ultimately its finest hour. Can you throw some light on that, Gopalji?
We were all completely caught by surprise. And there were a lot of people who were very distressed. And at a particular shareholders meeting of a company called Tata Chemicals, where I was the vice chairman and I was sitting next to Ratan Tata, who was the chairman, an old Parsi shareholder got up and he said, I don't know what I'll go home and tell Frenny, because I put all my savings into this Tata Finance. I know you have the right to reject my question because this is a shareholders meeting of Tata Chemicals, but I really need to tell Frenny something. It's a very human.
Absolutely.
And to my great surprise, I'm sure he must have thought about it, but he got up and said, I'm allowing you to ask this question on Tata Finance in Tata Chemicals.
Ratan Tata?
Ratan Tata.
Right.
And I want to tell you that we don't know exactly what the damage is, but not one of you retail investors will suffer. That's my assurance today. And then he sat down and I was sitting next to him and I said, boss, what have you done? You have no idea whether it's 50 crores, 100 crores, 5,000 crores. He said, if you want to say the right thing, you must say it at the right time. Otherwise, it's too late. And that is the message of both the Tata Steel story, which is separated in time by about 90 years between Tata Steel and Tata Finance. But the behavior was exactly the same. Own up, clean up, and move ahead.
Take responsibility. Let me just briefly ask you about another incident that took place when the terrorists attacked Bombay and Indian hotels. The Taj, the famous Taj Hotel, iconic Taj Hotel, was, you know, a scene of grim crimes out there. Again, the Tatas, with the same principles, stood by the staff and the employees and the customers of the Tata hotels.
Yes, I think it was a very dark day. An attack which was very dastardly in nature. I think the facts of what happened on that day are in the public domain. Many people lost their lives, some members of the public and some employees of the Taj. But yes, I think the Tata stood by the employees, stood by the people who had lost their lives.
Financially and morally.
Financially and morally. There was a welfare fund which was established,
Yes.
which has helped rehabilitate all those families and made them come back into the public domain.
Yeah,
I'd just like to add a little personal overlay to the
Yeah.
because this is in my knowledge. I'm not sure it's in the book, but it happened on a particular day, and the next morning, unbeknown to us that this is going to happen, I had a meeting at 10 o'clock with Ratan Tata. I said I must go because there were no cell phones, if I remember right, or if they were very rare.
Sporadic.
So I turned up at 5 to 10, and he was there. And both of us were probably looking bleary-eyed. And I said, you know, we are not in a mood for the meeting. Why did you come? And he said, well, I had committed to you that I'll see you at 10. But I agree with you, we are not in a mood. Can we postpone the meeting? And then we broke off. You see, this is a very small point. I mean, as a chairman, he had the liberty to get his assistant to ring up.
No one would have questioned that at that time.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
The second thing I want to mention is a story told to me by the head of HR in Taj. And he said that he was taking Ratan Tata around to meet the wounded employees. I'm using this story to illustrate the empathy part of it, not just the intellectual part. And he was very eager to show that we had taken a lot of trouble for our employees. So he kept saying various things. And at the end, he said, sir, have we done everything properly? Is there anything else you want us to do? He said, no, I've not come here to judge whether you've done everything properly. I've come here to ask myself and answer the question, what else should we be doing? That's a very important lesson to remember. We think business is all about money. Business must have money to survive, but business without emotion is not going to survive. And that is a very major lesson that I take away.
Let me get to another P that I find fascinating. You know, they persisted with Tata Steel, and today it's an iconic company in the Sensex 30 stocks of India. Persistence is what enabled Harishji, Titan to survive. Can you give me that story of how Titan was finding its way and then became this huge company?
You know, Tanishq is today the most preferred jewelry brand across the country, the most preferred brand of modern Indian women. But we should know that in the first 6 years of Tanishq, it was not a profitable business. It was losing money. There were strategic errors that were made by initially introducing 18 karat
gold,
18 karat studded jewelry.
22.
Yes, but for Indian women, gold and jewelry is about Sridhan. It's not just adornment, it's also investment. And Indian women would buy 22 karat gold. And there was a time when there was a lot of skepticism about the Tanishq business, including within the Tata Group. But Mr. Xerxes Desai, who was then the managing director of Titan, stood by the business. Mr. Desai has told me, I've interviewed him for the story, and he said, Harish, the market opportunity was so huge, I would let them close this business over my dead body. That's what he said.
It was 50,000 crores at that time, but today it's more like 3 lakh crores.
3 lakh or 4 lakh crores is the size of the market today. So Mr. Desai stood by that because he thought the market opportunity was huge. There was a change made in the strategy of Tanishq. 22 karat gold jewelry was launched. Something called the carat meter was launched.
Explain the carat meter. That's a fascinating story.
So, you know, Tanishq at that time did a survey of jewelers across the country. And they found that jewelers were not actually offering 22 karat gold as 22 karat gold. They were offering a lower caratage, let's say 17 or 18 carats. And Tanishq decided that we would offer 22 karat as 22 karat and be totally transparent about it. But now, how do you prove to the customer that 22 karat is 22 karat?
And you're probably wearing a 17 karat jewelry or bangle.
So what happened was that senior executives of Tanishq found a laboratory instrument called a spectrometer. You know, if you have studied physics, you know the Fraunhofer lines of every metal. So every metal has its unique Fraunhofer line. Gold has, and lead has, and copper has, and so forth. And they found that this instrument could actually read what the purity of that metal was. by examining the surface of the metal.
And that became the game changer.
So that laboratory instrument was brought back to India, and in a stroke of marketing genius, it was called the carat meter, and it was put into every Tanishq store. I have actually seen women come into Tanishq stores during that period of time. I used to be a junior manager in those days. They would test their wedding jewelry on the carat meter, break down and cry when they found that it was not the pure 22 karat gold that was promised. And that was a game changer. So Tanishq, along with purity, brought also modern expressions of traditional Indian designs of jewelry into the market. And you have seen the last 20, 25 years of Tanishq, it's flourished and become the largest and the most preferred brand of jewelry today. But it happened because Mr. Desai at that time, when the business was making losses, stood by the business and made sure that he gave it his full support. He was very, very persistent in his pursuit of that idea. And that's something that I narrate in this book and in this story.
And you stand by your products, whether it was in Tata Finance or now in Tanishq. You stood by your product.
Absolutely right. You stand by your product, and most importantly, Ramesh, you stand by the customer.
P also stands for progress, and progress often takes place outside your comfort zone. How did a person who became a superpower in steel, in salt, move to software? What is the story behind that?
So this is a tradition that has been set up over a long period of time. Progress comes because the leaders look at themselves as windows who are bringing outside perspectives into the business. Jamsetji Tata used to travel a lot, and he realized that from textiles he must move to steel, and so on and so forth. I won't go into every single episode. But come to the 60s, which is when Tata Consultancy came up, we had this wonderful power engineer called Fakir Chand Kohli.
FC Kohli.
FC Kohli, the marvelous, he's the father of Indian
Father
IT.
of the Indian IT industry, absolutely.
And he had come back with a master's in control systems and transmission lines. And he implemented a primitive sort of digital infrastructure to control the load centers of Mumbai. And people were impressed. And Tata Sons felt that we have a lot of data. Should we do something about it? So they asked, a number of people were involved. I'm not going into all the names. But at one stage, Mr. Kohli was requested to go and take charge of this. And here he was, the senior person in Tata Power, being asked to go and do a startup. Many people think startups are interesting phenomenon of today, but everything in Tata was a startup at some stage, including Tanishq. Yeah. And reluctant Mr. Kohli went along, and he had certain principles which he was very happy to explain. He said, it is not worth doing business if you can't make money out of it, if you can at least avoid losing money. And gradually over the next 20 years, he built up data processing capability. And then technology and time brought their fortunes, and TCS took off. And Ramadurai, who succeeded Mr. Kohli, took it to even greater heights, and so on and so forth. So this attitude of embracing the future is what I'm trying to emphasize, that the leadership of Tata has always looked at embracing the future. Now, can you imagine a company which started as a textile company, today looking at chips? We celebrate icons. Andrew Carnegie for steel, Henry Ford for automobiles, Johan Trippe for airlines, Thomas Watson for computers. All of that is rolled into one guy.
You know, another P that you didn't mention particularly, but it stands for philanthropy. And that's been almost the hallmark of the Tata Group. How has that shaped India? I mean, that philanthropy has shaped India with so many institutions. Just can you talk a little bit about that, Harishji?
Yes. So, you know, Jamsetji Tata, his driving philosophy was that the community should be center stage in the Tata Group. And his sons donated their wealth to the Tata Charitable Trusts. And it is through that the Tata Charitable Trusts are today holding 66% of the equity of the parent company Tata Sons. What this means is that 66% of the dividends that Tata Sons issues goes to the Tata Trusts, which are mandated to serve the community in different ways.
And set up hospitals,
and, yes,
institutes,
and just look at what the Tata Trusts have done over over the century and 25 years of their existence. There are some of the finest Indian institutions like the Tata Memorial Cancer Hospital in Mumbai, the Tata Cancer Hospital in Kolkata. There is a network of cancer hospitals coming up today across the country. You would have seen the news just a couple of years ago about 7 new cancer hospitals which had been inaugurated in the state of Assam.
You know, Joe Biden talks about the cancer moonshot, but Tata's thought about it 50, 75 years back.
You could say that. And if you look at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, more recently the National Center for Performing Arts, NCPA in Mumbai, or just the fight against COVID-19 when it happened in just 2 or 3 years back.
All building blocks for a good civil society.
Yes, so all this I think, all this and more the Tata Trusts have contributed to. So the Tata Trusts have several verticals focusing on specific initiatives.
And it comes from the cash flow that Tata Sons generates.
It comes from the dividends that Tata Sons issues to the Tata Trusts. And since the Tata Trusts hold 66% of the equity of Tata Sons, there is a constant flow of dividends.
Money earned from the community given back to the community.
And I think JRD Tata said this very well, exactly what you have said today. JRD Tata said what came from the people has gone back to the people over and over again. I think that has been the philosophy.
Absolutely right. Of course, one of the great sartaps, or the great leaders of the Tata organization has been JRD Tata. We're, my age, 50, 60, you probably still remember about him. But he was famous for his sartaps, the P for people that stands for... I want to give you a few names, generally from JRD Tata's era, and give me a synopsis of them so we can relive the memories of them. I'll start with you, Nani Palkhiwala.
JRD Tata stated, and he acted in line with that statement, that I want to get people who are better than me. And I suspect Nani Palkhiwala was one such recruit.
Legal luminary.
He was a legal luminary. He was a finance minister India never had as finance minister. And he was a source of wisdom which JRD probably valued. I wasn't there when Nani came into the board, but I was there in the end period before Nani died.
And his budget speech was famous across the stock market.
He educated the Indian public during the emergency time.
Supported Ms. Gandhi actually also.
Yeah, but at one stage he filed a case against, and JRD was horrified to learn that he is going to fight the Prime Minister. And Nani Palkhiwala told me the story himself. He said, I offered to resign from Tata Sons. And he says, no, you're doing what your conscience tells you. You will stay in Tata Sons. And the whole thing went through, and anyway, he's a great son of India.
A great son of India, no question. Another great Tata Sartap was Darbari Seth. Not well known to the current generation, but iconic in many ways.
Yeah, so I've had the privilege of working as Darbari Seth's executive assistant.
Amazing.
And he was a technocrat par excellence. He built Tata Chemicals.
And plucked at 40 or so to build Tata Chemicals?
Yes, he was very young. He had just returned from the US after doing his post-graduation in chemical engineering there when JRD Tata got him into Tata Chemicals. And Tata Chemicals was going through a very tough phase at that time because Mithapur was a very dry area. It did not have the water required. And people had virtually given up. Yeah, people had virtually given up on that company. But Darbari Seth, working with a very, very passionate team, built Tata Chemicals. He built water recycling plants. He ensured that Mithapur withstood the ravages of drought. He ensured that the technology to make soda ash, which was known to very few people at that time, was perfected in Tata Chemicals at Mithapur. And then look at what more he went on to do. He went on to launch Tata Salt, which is today, I think,
the world's largest selling
salt, but reaches half the population of India
and Tata
every
Tea.
year. He then inspired and launched Tata Tea, which is India's favorite brand of tea today.
And he was plucked by JRD Tata almost from...
Yes, he was very young when JRD Tata brought him into the Tata Group, and then he stayed with the Tata Group until he retired, much like Nani Palkhiwala did.
Right. How about Rusi Modi?
I didn't know Rusi Modi personally because he had left before I joined the group.
He was quite a character though.
But I'm told that he was a fantastic human relations person. And he had a tremendous instinct for people. And while everything may not have been perfect about him, there's nothing perfect about any leader for that matter. He was a wonderful leader for Tata Steel at a very crucial time. And people remember Rusi Modi very fondly for plucking them out, for giving them a chance to move ahead. and developing talent in Tata Steel.
What will history write about Sumant Mulgaonkar?
So Sumant Mulgaonkar was a perfectionist and a person who sought excellence in everything that he did. He would insist that every single machine, every single vehicle that came out of the Tata Motors plant, which was Telco at that time,
Yes.
was par excellence and world class. When he put up the Pune plant of Tata Motors, he wanted a world-class plant that India should be proud of. But let me tell you something which many people may not know. When he put up this plant in Pune, he also spent 15 lakhs of rupees in putting up a lake next to the plant. And people asked him, Mr. Mulgaonkar, why are you putting up this lake? But he was very clear. He said that I want to return to the environment what this plant probably takes from the environment. And that lake flourishes until today. It also has a nursery. It has many
Bird
trees,
sanctuary.
migratory birds which come there. And J.R.D. Tata famously said of Sumant Mulgaonkar, he said that we did not have to, create a lake to build a truck, but we did, and I am so proud that we did that.
There's a saying that sometimes men create history, and sometimes history creates men. And I think we'll keep debating that, would the Tatas create these managers or did the managers create Tata? But there's a fantastic manager and a poet called William Yeats who said this to the public: do not wait to strike till the iron is hot, but make it hot by striking it. Jamsetji Tata was such a colossus, and he did the striking for India Inc., both figuratively and literally. RIP to a true Indian icon, and many thanks to both of you for sharing his wisdom and his legacy with us.
Thank you,
and we'll see you
Ramesh.
soon on another episode of Icons. Have a great day. I'm Ramesh Damani.